Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Huffer and Friends. This is a podcast designed to help you flourish at life and relationships. I'm your host, Huffer, the lead pastor at the Gathering Christian Church in Naples, Florida. And the way this podcast works is I invite friends of mine or friends of mine on the podcast to talk about different issues or topics that are related to flourishing in those two areas, at life and in relationships. And I believe I have the best friends in the world, and that they know the best people in the world, and that me sharing them with you will help you flourish because they've helped me flourish in those areas. And so you can always follow along by subscribing to the YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. That's where our platforms are located. Today, I'm excited to introduce to you Nancy Caldwell. This episode is going to air in January, which is when we're trying to set new goals, trying to lead ourselves better and lead ourselves well. And so I got Nancy's name from a mutual friend, Doug Parks, who is a founder of Intentional Churches, and Nancy works with Doug a lot in this area called life planning. So Nancy, you want to introduce yourself a little bit about to our audience, a little bit about who you are, your family, where you come from, and what you do for a living.
Yep. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I am originally from Southern Ohio, outside of the Cincinnati area. So I've grown up as with heartbreak with the Bengals and the Reds over the years. I've learned how to deal with that. And my husband and Doug, who you know, went to college together. We're all from that Southern Ohio area. And then we all moved out to Las Vegas together, and our families. And now I live in Las Vegas since 97, 98, around there. My husband and I, we have 2 kids that are no longer children, 24 and 19. So we're verging empty nester.
Yes.
Life transition, which is some of the stuff we're going to talk about, life transition things. Our 24-year-old Katie is currently back at home going to graduate school at UNLV to become an athletic trainer, and working really hard at that. And our 19-year-old is Andrew. He's in college at University of Northern Colorado studying performance jazz and business. So completely opposite spectrums.
That is so neat. What's his instrument then if it's performance jazz?
Yeah, he's originally, his main instrument is alto sax, but now he's also soprano, tenor, clarinet, and this semester we learned he's venturing into the flute. So
Okay.
We regularly get requests, hey, do you mind if I buy a flute? I'm like, that's not just a regular thing.
That's amazing. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
My dad, so a couple things. My dad grew up a Reds fan his whole life, even from Oklahoma, because of Pete Rose and Johnny Bench. Those were like his 2 favorite players growing up, because Johnny Bench is from Oklahoma, where I'm from. And so awesome. We loved Johnny Bench. And then my family's very big in the music industry, the music area. And jazz music is like what I grew up listening to, aspired to be, but never could do it myself. I never got to the level of performance music jazz. My sister is a vocal jazz minor, and so she got all the talent from our family.
Yeah,
so I'm still bitter about that. That's okay.
Well, good. So maybe I'm making connections for Andrew as well.
That's right.
Yeah,
so Nancy, you said there's some transitions in your life, like you ended up doing what you're doing now. So right now, just kind of walk us back to kind of like your profession and what you've done over the years and how you ended up doing what you're doing now.
What I'm doing. Sure. Well, my husband and I moved out to Las Vegas to do church plant work as lay leaders. Like we're not employed with the churches. He's a marriage and family therapist. I'm a clinical social worker. And I worked for 15 plus years in the child welfare realm. So with, at-risk youth, families, adoption, foster care, all of that, and worked for that for years. And then there became a point where our family needed something different when our kids were younger, right? And my husband, Chris, he's always been in private practice as a marriage and family therapist. And so we're like, okay, I'll join private practice with you. But it wasn't like my favorite thing.
No.
Because, it's very different agency work, working with kids, being out and
Yeah.
about, coordinating services, things like that, to come to let's sit one-on-one in an office and talk. And so at that point, Doug Parks, who we talked about, had started doing his business and had introduced me to life planning, something he had been through when he was in some transition. And so then I was like, that might be helpful to me to, in my own story, to kind of figure out, like, is this going to be okay for me?
Yeah.
um, to do private practice and be home with our kids and things. Or is there something else that I should be doing? So I went and had my own life plan done, which was super, super beneficial. And a part of that was that, there's a filtering process that we can talk about later, but like that says, is this going to work for you or not, in terms of who you were created to be and what's good for you and your skills and your, kind of how you're wired. And private practice was ish okay for me. And so then we were able to talk about, okay, what are the things that you need to add in that would make private practice a green light and ready to go? And part of that was becoming a life plan facilitator. Part of it was continuing to do some community outreach where I facilitate like meals at different times throughout the year for needy families, things like that. And so it really helps me hone in that I can do this with these things added in, and then it's one big picture that works really well for me. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, I want to dig into a lot of that you just talked about. So one of the things, so what you're basically showing through your story is there is this ongoing process in life of self-discovery, basically, where
Yes.
you don't know, you don't come out of the womb really knowing, like, oh, I am going to be this. Even I came out of the womb, my parents and grandparents were like, shall play trumpet, and it's like, well,
Right.
maybe not, I might have the wrong embouchure to play trumpet, or I may not have any athletic skill whatsoever, even though my parents want me to do that, or I have all the skill but none of the passion. Andre Agassi was a professional tennis player and hated playing tennis, but did it because that's what his parents want him to do. So like, so much of your story is this process of trying things, discovering some stuff about yourself, what you're good at, starting to do some of those things, realizing I'm good at this, but I'm not passionate maybe about this. I want it to look a little bit differently. And you're slowly kind of weeding your way into what area in life is best for you for flourishing, right? Is that kind of in a nutshell, basically what life planning is?
Yeah, it's kind of looking at where you've been already. What are the things that are emerging that tell you more about your story and how you've interacted with your story, and that then kind of gives you this launch pad of like, what am I using those things to be intentional and very specific in my life?
Oh, that's cool. That's so great. So as we're focusing in this month on self-leadership, and we'll talk about goals in another episode, but today it reminds me of that habit by Stephen Covey, begin with the end in mind. Like, we're really trying to figure out, like, at the end of your life, like, what do you want to look back at and be happy that you did, that this was your profession, this was what your life calling was all about. So I'm going to just kind of go back down to kind of the basics. Like, why should, most people are like just trying to get through the day, trying to get the kids up, get to school, make the food, get the income, pay the bills. Why should we care about self-leadership and goal setting, or asking big questions like, who am I? Like, why is that important?
Yeah, it's a good question. Matter of fact, a part of one of the things that we do in my family is identify our opus gloria, right? And that's like, what do we want said about us at the end of our life? Like, what's the ideal, And that's part of, like, if this is the idea, how are we working that backwards? Like you're bringing up, right? So, and I think one of the biggest things for me when I think about that is intentionality, right? One of my favorite books, I don't know if you've read it, by Donald Miller, is A Million Miles in a Thousand Years.
Yeah.
I'm not wrong, or flip. But basically, it's about, like, he wrote Blue Like Jazz, and then they made a movie about his life, and then he wrote this book about the making of the movie. And it was that idea of, like, am I sitting by and watching someone else dictate, direct my life, or am I being intentionally involved as the main character, right? So do we want to be intentional? We were all created. We were all created by God. We were all created with a set of, who we uniquely are. And are we utilizing those unique skills and assets to our fullest potential and being very intentional about it in terms of that? And the reason for that is because we want is to be your own main character, right?
Yeah.
Like not to just let life pass you by.
Hmm. And that's where I think it's Andy Stanley who said something along the lines of, everyone ends up somewhere in life, but very
Mm-hmm.
few end up somewhere on purpose.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
what we want, like the reason why we talk about life planning, goal setting, any of this stuff is because you get one shot at life.
That's right.
You
Yeah.
get one shot. And at the end of it, do you want to look back and have regret?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to look back and have left a legacy that you wanted to leave to
Right.
others? And that's really the heart of
Mm-hmm.
this, like getting the most out of this life that you've been given.
Yeah.
And
Who was I as I interacted with the world? Did I do it with what was given to me, the gifts and the assets? And
that's great. I love that. How does ignoring these questions, and from your experience working with people, how does ignoring these big, large in life questions and topics, how does it rob us of that flourishing, what we would call the gathering, the made for more life?
Yeah. That's a good thing to think about too, because I think what happens is with that same idea of like, if are we just letting life pass by, or are we engaging in it, right? And so if we're just letting life pass by and not engaging, right, in the important things or the things that are important things, then we'll get to these moments, right, in our life where we're overwhelmed, we're stressed, we're anxious, we're depressed, we're, all of those real things. But are they coming out of the core of like, we're not really living the life that we were intended to live, or utilizing the things to pursue loving others and loving God and, what's right in our life, right? It's just unsatisfaction or not fulfilling, and then you take dumps, right? And so not pursuing that will lead into this like kind of like
it really does lead to I can see you kind of mentioning kind of the idea of like it leads into kind of this survivalist mentality of just trying to get through the day, making sure the bills are paid, the foods, the kids have food, I have food, and you were meant for more than that. Like I really believe that you were meant.
Right. But
say it again. I'm sorry.
I was going to say those are important things, but not the only things, right?
Yeah. You're meant for more than that. They're important things. You got to have them. Maslow's hierarchy of needs has those as like the base that you build off of. But there is this higher level of fulfillment that only having a larger vision or meaning or purpose for your life can satisfy you.
Yeah.
And I believe that Jesus talks about like that's what you were created for, is not just to survive, but to thrive, but to have a meaning and a purpose. And so when you don't find those, you turn into just Groundhog Day.
Right. Which leads to anger, resentment, anxiety, depression,
substance abuse.
Right.
Yeah.
Filling it with all filling up with things that are temporary versus intentional and driven, right?
Oh, that's so good. What common mistakes do people make when they try to do this on their own? Like, why would you say someone needs a guide to walk them through this?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of great books and self-help kind of stuff out there that guides people through like finding your purpose, having a purpose-driven life, all of that, right? And I think those are helpful and good tools and good things. Lots of them are good to read. Some of them maybe not so good. But I think like having someone walk you through it, first of all, gives an outside perspective, right? Of like oftentimes others will see things in our life and our story that we don't see, right? That brings it to light. But also we're all wired in the way of what we want to find, we're going to find, right? So what I'm looking for, I'm going to find. And so if I'm looking for justification that, this is what I should do, I'm going to find that justification, right? But if I have an outsider kind of asking different questions, saying like, well, what about this? Or have you thought about this? Or I didn't really see it that way. What makes you see it? Then it starts to give some accountability to, what you're doing and how you're processing through it. And it gives an outside view of like what's, what are we looking at, and asking the right questions, that sort of thing. The other part of that is we all get derailed with life, right? And so I can have this idea that I'm starting down a pathway and I have a goal and I'm going to do that. And this idea comes in on me, right? And so then I get derailed. And if I don't have a specific plan that I've kind of come up with, and have people holding me accountable to that plan, which is all a part of what we set up, right? Then it's easy to just get overtaken by the day to day, getting through tomorrow, getting through the kids, getting through, let's get to soccer practice. Let's do this, right?
It reminds me of that old adage of like, you're perfectly designed. Your life is perfectly designed to get the results it's currently getting. Which is kind of sobering to think about. Like, oh, okay, the results I'm currently getting, I've perfectly, like, everything I do from when I get up and go to bed, and the habits and the thinking, like, is designed to produce this. And in order to produce something different, you kind of need an interruption. It reminds me of actually another Donald Miller book, Building a Story Brand. Have you read that book before? Okay. In that book, he talks about how every great story, there's a hero that needs a guide.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no story if the hero can do it on their own. And the reality is we can't do it on our own. We do need guide and guides. I would argue that Jesus is the most important guide that we have, but he also gives us, people like Paul in 1 Corinthians 11:1 that says, follow me as I follow Christ. And so we have other guides around us to help us with, if your marriage is struggling, well, here's a marriage guide called a marriage counselor. If like you have like spiritual formation, like struggles and don't know how to grow in your faith, here's a pastor or spiritual director.
Mm-hmm.
To figure out what your calling and purpose is and what maybe God's calling you to. A life planner is a great guide and resource to put around you to help you navigate that.
Right.
So we've talked about life planning. We've kind of mentioned it. What is it? Like, break it down for us. If I, thinking about like Michael Scott on The Office, and he's like, explain this to me like I'm a 6-year-old. Like, explain life planning to me like I know nothing about it, and so people can understand the benefit of it and what it is.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, life planning is a specific, kind of a specific title, but other people look at it as life mapping, look at it coaching, as intentional growth plans, any of the above, right? But this process is thinking of it as a process that walks a person to a plan of how to live an intentional life, meant specifically and uniquely for them, right? And so it's not like a cookie cutter or anything. It's specific about you. And the way that we do that, right, is first of all, we kind of look at life in 5 different domains, right? Or categories, if you will. So if you break each of us up into categories: personal, family, vocational, faith, ministry, and then community, right? Mm-hmm. And pretty much anything we do can fit into those 5 categories. And then we start to take a look at what those categories have looked like over our life, and we start examining it, right? We circle around it and we look at it and ask questions about it, right? Get curious, like what's going right, what's going wrong, what's confusing, what's missing, right? That starts to lead us toward where we've been and what emerges as the ways that we've engaged with life up to this point, right? Like, we all engage differently, the story is the story, but how do we engage with it? And those kinds of things are what we're looking for. When I did my life plan, I remember the facilitator said, like, listen, at the end of day 1, you're going to feel like we're dissecting an animal. We've cut you open. We've taken out each little piece, and we've looked at it and we examined it, and we, learned what we're supposed to learn under the microscope, and then we put it over to the side, and then we take out the next organ, and then we take out the next, right? And she said, at the end of the day, we're just going to cover you up with like a paper towel, and you're going to feel very raw, very open, but that's the and 100% felt like that and can feel like that. But that's the process of like, we don't want to just whisk through things. We want to circle around it, learn everything. And we do that through charting. We do that through asking the different questions. We do that through taking a look at those different categories. And then from there, right after we do that, then we start to put specifications to, right? What does all that mean? Well,
Hmm.
how did I interact? What are my skills? What are the ways that, what's the, what are the patterns and the rhythms that are emerging of like, oh, you did this then. Oh, you did this then. Okay, we see that's kind of like, right. And those things emerge as like your talents and your skills and, that idea of who you were created to be, what's uniquely you, right? We also take a look at what's like your hardwiring. So some of those emerge as like, skills, but then we develop them over our story, right?
Hmm.
We have hardwiring too, right? Like abstract versus concrete thinking, right? And where do we fit in that? Like what drives us? Those are some of our hardwired things that can, God put in us. And so we start to look at that, take all of those to then start to formulate what am I doing now,
Mm-hmm.
and how does that fit into who I am, who I was created to be, and what I'm supposed to be doing, right? And then a plan starts to emerge from there.
And this is done over typically a 2-day, like
Mm-hmm.
full day intensive. Would you call it a training or strategic planning? Retreat
Yeah,
type setting.
yeah. It's just a 2-day intensive. So oftentimes, or the way that I've done it is, it's 2 days. I have an office where we meet up. We'll do breakfast together. We'll do lunch together. We spend the whole 2 days together. And lots of flip charts get put up all around the room. That's all about your life. And so by the time it's over, you're looking around the room like, okay, here's my life up on flip charts. But super helpful. And yeah, we do that. And then we can invite others in that's important, like a spouse or someone that's important to your story too, to help learn about you and give accountability to your story too. And so then what emerges from there.
Hmm. Okay. How does life planning, like this is super intriguing to me. Like I would love to have, I think I'm self-centered enough to be like, yes, let's talk about me for these 2 days, full days. I love that idea. No, how does this help the normal person in the room? Like, maybe someone's listening to this. They're not a CEO. They're not an entrepreneur. They're working a 9 to 5. Like, how does this life planning process help that person?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it, like, even what I've shared a little bit about myself is, like it's helpful in terms of like giving you a filtering process of, is this going to work for me or is it not going to work for me? Right. So like there is actually toward the end of the life planning process where you kind of put all of these things into a filter, right? Like how I'm wired, what's my heart, what's my passion, right? Like those kinds of things that we identify. You put them into a filter and then we can filter things right next to it, right? So I can filter like how does agency work versus private practice versus being a stay-at-home mom versus how do all of those things fit? And then you use like we easy red, yellow, green, right? Like doesn't work, maybe works a little or great, right? But you can do that with anything, right? Like I've helped my kids do it with like choosing a college. What, like you want A, B, and C in a college. Well, how does this college fit into your values? How does this fit into who you are? How does this, my life plan facilitator talked about how they used it when they were building their dream home and realized that they were isolating themselves and community is one of their values. And so they tanked their whole dream home because it was out in the woods by a creek, right? And so it's like a filtering system for lots of different things. And so even someone who, isn't out in the corporate world or isn't doing those things, but like I'm at a transition about to be an empty nester, right? So I'm starting to do the same process, like, let me look at what are my options next? What do I want to do? And I've been doing that over a couple of years because like I'm not driving kids to soccer practice anymore. we're not going to concerts every other week, right? Like his concerts are in Colorado, I'm in Nevada. like that, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
less and less of that. So what's more and more of who I am and and there's a billion things that we can choose from, right? But they're not all the right things for me to choose. So it helps with that, like I'm in this transition, I'm at this crossroads. But it also helps with the more we learn about ourselves and our story, the more we're able to then engage, right? And so kind
Yeah.
of how you started, right? Like it's an ongoing learning process about who we are, who God created us to be, and then how do we take that to do our bigger picture of like love God, love people, and what do we do within those, right?
It's almost like you're helping people have a framework for decision making in life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What you say yes to, what do you say no to? I remember when I was like dating my wife and we were engaged and I get married and I got approached about planting a church in India and all kinds of stuff. And I was like excited about all these opportunities. And she was like, I don't feel called to that. And I got real frustrated. And I went home to my roommate who was single and had never had a girlfriend. And he was like, he gave me the best wisdom for relationships I'd ever heard. And I was like, well, where did this come from, bro? But he just like, well, maybe she's not limiting. I was like, she's limiting my options. He's like, maybe she's not limiting you, she's focusing you, you know, which I still get mad at to this day. But you go having a life plan and going through this type of process doesn't limit all the options out there, because like you said, there's a billion things that you could do. What it does do is it helps unpack your story in such a way and your gifting to know like what does give you energy, what does give you passion, where should you focus your time so that you can get the most out of life. Yeah. If someone's interested, like if someone's out there and they're like listening to this and like, man, this is exactly what I need. Where would they start? Like is there a organization they go to find a life planner? Like what are the next steps someone would take if they're interested in life planning?
Yeah, they're welcome to contact me for sure. I'm on calls like this all the time just to kind of answer questions, talk through it. Talk to the person who I was originally trained through the Person Center. It's a book called Living the Life You're Meant to Live, and it kind of goes through some of the constructs and different activities. Is also a good resource to start looking at, like, is what will we be doing, what's this look like, how do I do this, and and then if you've read that and have more questions, definitely can reach out as well. Yeah.
How would they reach out to you? Like you have a website, email, like what would that look like?
I do. Our website is our counseling center. My husband and I just here in Las Vegas. It's lifespringcounselingcenter.org. And so contact information's on email.
Great. That's lifespringcounselingcenter.org.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Awesome. What word of encouragement would you give to someone who's new to faith in Jesus, trying to figure out this idea of a calling in life? They're being called to something. What would you say to that person?
Yeah. What I would say is, obviously, I believe, where all of us have a story. All of our stories are extremely important, right? No one person's story is better than the others. We all need each other, and we all, are valuable and worthy and essential, necessary to God's creation and what God's doing in us. So I would say step into understanding yourself, step into understanding your story, and how even before you found faith, or even before this new journey that you're on, what were the ways that I can see that God created me, but also was interacting with me before I knew God existed, accepted God existed. So whatever that looks like in the faith journey. step into that, know that it's important, know that it's essential, and see where the journey is going to take you next.
That's beautiful. I had a friend that told me that they just kept saying yes to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they ended up where they're at now. We just kept saying yes to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of what you were saying there. That's beautiful. Nancy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all of this info. And I think it's such a gift that there is something called life planning out there, and that there's a resource that is faith-based that can help people process this with the lens of being called to make disciples and reach the lost and establish the kingdom of God here on earth. And so grateful for you and what you do day in and day out for the kingdom. Everybody, thank you all for listening to this. If you have any questions, reach out to Nancy at, it was LifeSpring. What was it again? LifeSpring?
Yes, LifeSpring Counseling Center.
LifeSpringCounselingCenter.org. As
We'll
always, go ahead.
even if you just Googled LifeSpring Las Vegas, you'll
find you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Nancy, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for tuning in again to another episode of the Cy Huffer and Friends. We are on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. That's where you can follow us along and stay in the know of what's happening and when episodes drop every Thursday. And as always, remember, you are made for more, so don't settle for anything less. Have a great day. Okay, Nancy, thank you so much